right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr. revealing the key to victory over Terence Crawford, and also sharing what he knows about when and where the fight will take place. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to be in the 147-pound division with a update of complete obviousness from Errol Spence Jr. about the Terence Crawford fight. Two subject matters: how he beats him, and number two, when and where the fight will be taken. And also, he did make a comment about whether or not the winner of that fight would be considered one of the greatest welterweights of all time. But before I get into that subject matter, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a longtime subscriber to the channel, thank you so much for your support over the years. It is greatly, greatly appreciated in the videos that we do and in the live streams that we do. If you are new to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so that you can be notified of when we release more videos, which we do pretty much on a daily basis in the live stream format and in the video format. So there's always a good opportunity to talk about the hottest topics in boxing. Now, first things first, there's a big fight a very good fight that took place last night in San Antonio, Texas. I was ringside for the fight. Very, very, very entertaining. A lot of very good fights on the card. The head fight on the card was for the 126-pound championship for the WBC between Mark Magnifico Magsayo and Ray Vargas, in which Ray Vargas won the fight. But on the undercard of that was several other good fights. One of them was Frank Martin, an up-and-coming lightweight who was promoted by Errol Spence Jr.'s Man Down Promotions, and Jackson Marinez, who had lost, most famous for having lost a very controversial decision to Rolly Romero. So as a result of Frank Martin being on the card, Errol Spence Jr., who was his promoter, was in attendance in San Antonio, Texas, for the fight, and was asked, of course, about the biggest fight in boxing between Errol Spence Jr. and himself. And the answers that he gave, I found to be very, very interesting. Now, obviously, I was at the fight, right, watching the fight, saw the interview being take place, but did not get to hear what he actually said until the next morning when I, like everybody else, watched the great channel Fight Hype and the video clips and stuff that they put out about it. No need to take their audio and put their audio in my video. Just if you want to actually see what he said, you can go there to actually hear that. But I want to give you my impressions on it because I think that this is something that I really do like about Errol Spence Jr., and that is that the man is just absolutely brutally honest. I do not see him as being somebody that is just saying things just to be spectacular for the media. So he was asked, first things first, he was asked about what it takes to beat, what he needed to do to beat Terence Crawford. And he answered the question in a way that is just very, very obvious. He says he has to be better. I have to be better than him. And the funny thing is that even though that to me, that is a very simplistic answer, I think that is the best answer that you can possibly give, because that is the case. He's going to just have to be better on that day than the man that he is in the ring with, and he's going to have to be better at him at what? Putting his game plan into executing his game plan and preventing Terence Crawford from exercising his game plan. What it matters is what those guys are going to do on that night. It really doesn't matter what they've done against, even common opponents, what they've done over the course of the years. It's going to depend on what those guys have and what they do that day, right? Didn't talk about going to the body. He didn't talk about, well, I'm gonna have to make, it's gonna come down to who makes better adjustments. No, man, it's just gonna come down who's the better fighter that night, and that is who's gonna win the fight. And the question is, can Errol Spence Jr. be the better fighter than Terence Crawford that night? End of story. No other real grand explanation needed from him. Now, he also was asked about when, if he thinks this fight is going to take place. And I'm going to tell you now, Errol Spence Jr. sounds like he's the one that really wants this fight, because he says he does not know when it's going to take place. He doesn't know where it's going to take place, but it's the biggest fight of boxing. Terrence wants the fight. I want the fight. So I'm sure we're gonna get that fight. I wish that Terrence Crawford's camp sounded the same way, because Errol is saying that we're in negotiations. So what are they talking about in the negotiations? If he doesn't know where, and if he doesn't know when, that is obviously one of the things that those guys are trying to settle on. Seeing as and this is one thing that I noticed in that fight in San Antonio, Texas. They took that fight in San Antonio, Texas. It was almost all Mexicans in that environment, and it was the Alamo Dome. And I would say that the Alamo Dome was probably, they had about half of the seats available for the Alamo Dome. But for a fight like Ray Vargas, for a guy who's not from the United States, and then you have Mark Magsayo, who is not from the United States, for those guys to be able to draw even that size of crowd that they had, that the PBC had there, tells you about the amount of money that the fights in Texas can bring in when you have a somebody that is popular amongst the fighters in that state. I would think that that could also be one of the things that Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford will be going through, is exactly where is that fight going to be, because that where that fight is going to be is going to dictate a lot of the conversations about the money. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about, man, was that Errol said something that I really appreciated how he answered the question. He was asked, do you think the winner of this fight is going to be one of the greatest welterweights of all time? And he said, "Look, man, I've been a champion for the IBF for the last five. I'm going on 5.5 years as being the IB as being the IBF champion. At welterweight. So I have to be more than likely one of the longest reigning champions that there has. However, that there's been. However, it's going to be up for everybody else to decide whether or not the winner of that fight winds up being one of the greatest welterweights of all time. I will tell you that my take on it is that you can never really know. All you can really say is who's the best welterweight of a time period, right? The last great welterweight, somebody that really in that weight division stood up far and beyond everybody else in that weight division, was two people really that were vying for that, and that was Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather Jr. And Floyd Mayweather Jr. having come out on top of that fight, having dominated in that division for several years. Boom, he was the greatest welterweight when he was at welterweight. Maybe also several weight classes below that. The last guy to really do that before Floyd Mayweather Jr. Because in the 1990s there was Oscar De La Hoya, Shane Mosley, and Felix Tito Trinidad, but I don't think either any of those guys really did like solidify and lock down that particular era of welterweights. But before that, you could very well say that it was Sugar Ray Leonard. Now, the winner between those two guys, Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, yeah, I think that it would be fair to say that's, of this, last 10 years, since maybe, 2017 to now, the winner of that probably would, but you can't really go into any type of all-time great type of conversations. But anyway, I just thought that was really, interesting little tidbits from Errol Spence Jr. I will tell you guys, recommend very highly that you guys, if you have an ability to get to a fight, like a Ray Vargas versus Mark Magsayo that was those guys. It was a much more entertaining fight ringside than often I've seen these guys look like they were they were a lot on TV, a lot better fighters, a lot of very, very technical, a lot of adjustments being made that you can really see when you're up close on them. But fantastic fight card. Congratulations to Frank Martin. Also, Samuel Arnold, young Samuel Arnold was on the card. Rashidi Ellis was on the card with a quick knockout. So a lot of great fights. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.